started our office in London, where we were in London in the 80s. We were both teaching at the Architectural Association, and then we decided to found our office in 89. We actually founded it without really having concrete projects, and we started doing competitions and then getting small projects in London. And in a way, I think our ideas were very much inspired by the conversations that were going on at the AA at the time, which was to do with the situation of the post-industrial city. Cutting a diagonal swathes through an extremely large city block, although it had never been built as an intact city block. And the former use on this site, of which some buildings remained and some had been knocked down already, were the sort of industrial and laboratory, well, industrial buildings that had been built really for the Juncker firm in their making of gas appliances. And right next door, there was the gas behälter or gas containers on the neighbouring site. Plus, there were some old industrial railway buildings, which were mostly out of use in brick that actually faced towards the railway, so they didn't face towards the site. So we had a situation where we had very little sort of frontage, let's say street frontage, a large area, and then a bit of street frontage at the rear where there was a 19th century corner, let's say a 19th century ordinary rectangular street junction, of which one part was missing, which was on our site. And even when we came to the site, this building was still existing, building 109, and there were one or two others here that the government had already destroyed, actually, and we felt they needn't have done because they could have been integrated. And what we realized would be a gift to the city would be to actually connect these trees, connect this route, and make a small park through the site that would eventually connect to the train station, therefore linking people from a further part of Dessau through the site, and also helping to bind this huge agency with 800 workers suddenly coming like an UFO into Dessau to bind the activities of these people into the town and vice versa. The park ended up being quite a narrow one, something like this, but anyway, still perceivable as a park that was then planted, and now it's getting more and more embedded into the city as the trees grow. So that actually left us with probably only something like half the area in which to put a rather large building. So we, the form that the building ended up with is, so I can never sketch it freehand, but something like this. Now that's got too big, but anyway. It has the building is a narrow band of about 14 meters wide with an atrium in the center. And then this bend is in the wrong place, something like this. We were creating a forum space here that would actually really link with the park and bring the park through into it, because this is a fully glazed wall. And then we make a link building from the forum towards the industrial building that we use as a sort of magazine storage for books, and we have a building that links up onto it, something like that, and we use this part for natural ventilation. That's this connection. So we connect on to the old industrial building here, and we use the small two-story building as a sort of harbinger, and that's the entrance for the project. You can either walk here or you can walk between these two, and here are some industrial buildings on this part of the site. So it's very much trying to link the building into these old industrial buildings that remain, and the idea of connecting the building to the park. And here I can see I've drawn the wrong shape because this has an important crank here. Sorry, I'm not very good at drawing. Something like this. And you end up with a very generous so-called forum space linking, really pulling the park space in optically into the building, and then a cranked forum, cranked atrium, which is where everybody's working, and there's a route through that you can, 2 stories, so half the building makes a bridge at this point, and you can see underneath, and obviously that's where you can see through, and that's where the barriers are. Again, this space you need to experience to understand it all, and then there's a sequence of bridges that happen something like this. So that's the main circulation, is that you're led through into the atrium space, and then you go up various stairs to the bridges, and so you reach your workplace really through this more public space. So in a way, it is something to do with trying to integrate this huge building into the grain of the 19th century city, and at the same time to make it welcoming to people who are either working there or just visiting. And we also decided to put the restaurant outside the building on the other side of the park, so that even if you were working there, you would have to get wet if it's raining, or passers-by can go to the cafe and people would mix. So again, that it doesn't seem like an organization with people doing things in secret, but the whole thing is made more transparent and public.
Venice has 5 administrative boroughs. Mestre is one of them, and the island is also one. The island, as we know it, attracts 30 million tourists a year, but only around 40,000 Venetians live there. Mestre hardly has any tourists, and around 250,000 inhabitants. That means that today's Venetians live essentially in Mestre, and that's why we have a kind of mirror image situation. The island is, of course, full of museums, palaces, and exhibitions. The Biennale is held there. Mestre is where the people are, but there are no cultural institutions. There's a cinema, a small theater, a kind of cultural center, and that's it. Here's a convent, and here a small church, and here a kind of corner building. And this is where the new museum will be. In fact, a history museum concerned with local history. Here a small building, and here lots of these small houses. These courtyards make up small storage sheds and former garages, more like roadside structures. You can wander through them everywhere. So we picked up on these passageways, this finding your way in order to bring alive the central area of the city. And I think that the museum really hits a nerve because people realize that it's voyeuristic and that sort of thing, even though they say they don't understand it. But nevertheless, I think it is palpable for everyone. And what is there has a certain quality, and that it has an effect that can be liberating and doesn't leave you cold. And that's why people go there and meet other people. Then it begins to be a natural, central interest for the city.
Also ein ganz zentrales Anliegen für die Stadt zu werden.